Keeping Up with the Joneses, a deep dive into social comparison theory and its impact on personal debt. On a quiet suburban street, lined with nearly identical semi-detached homes, the story of modern personal debt unfolds in subtle, almost invisible ways. No dramatic stock market crashes, no sudden medical emergencies, just driveways, garden fences, delivery vans, and the quiet pressure of comparison. This is the story of how ordinary families slide into extraordinary debt, not because they are reckless, but because they are human. The invisible benchmark. In 1954, social psychologist Leon Festinger introduced what became known as social comparison theory. His idea was simple but powerful. People determine their own social and personal worth based on how they stack up against others. In today's world, that comparison no longer stops at neighbors. It stretches across Instagram feeds, school WhatsApp groups, office parking lots, and even LinkedIn promotions. The benchmark for normal spending is no longer personal income, it is perceived lifestyle. For many households, the comparison begins innocently. A neighbor renovates their kitchen. A colleague upgrades to a new SUV. A friend posts photos from a luxury holiday in Dubai. Each event plants a small psychological seed. If they can afford it, why can't we? What goes unnoticed is a critical distinction. Income is private, but lifestyle is public. The case of Daniel and Sarah. Daniel and Sarah were a dual-income couple in their mid-30s. They lived comfortably. Their combined annual income placed them above the national median. They owned a modest home, saved regularly, and carried manageable debt. Then the neighborhood began to change. 3 homes on their street underwent major renovations within a year. Granite countertops, open-plan extensions, landscaped gardens. At school pickup, conversations revolved around private tutoring, ski holidays, and summer camps in Europe. Daniel and Sarah didn't feel poor, but they started to feel behind. The psychology is subtle. Social comparison operates through what researchers call upward comparison, measuring oneself against those perceived as better off. While upward comparison can motivate improvement, it also breeds dissatisfaction when the gap feels unattainable. Within months, Daniel and Sarah refinanced their mortgage to fund a kitchen renovation. The monthly payment increased slightly, nothing alarming. Shortly after, they replaced their 5-year-old car with a financed SUV. The monthly payments stacked quietly. No single decision felt irresponsible. Each was justified as an investment or what families like ours do. Debt by 1,000 upgrades. Modern consumer finance makes comparison spending frictionless. Buy now, pay later plans reduce immediate pain. Low-interest car financing normalizes long-term commitments. Credit cards offer reward points that disguise revolving balances. According to recent household finance data in many developed economies, consumer debt growth has outpaced wage growth for years. The cause is rarely survival spending alone. A significant portion stems from lifestyle inflation, incremental upgrades in housing, vehicles, technology, and leisure. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. As income rises, spending rises to match new expectations. Satisfaction returns to baseline, and the cycle repeats. For Daniel and Sarah, the upgrades did not stop at the kitchen or the car. There were subscription services, new furniture to match the space, premium gym memberships, and upgraded holidays. Their savings rate declined quietly from 15% to 5%, then to nearly 0. On paper, they were thriving. In reality, their financial resilience was eroding. The social media multiplier. What once happened between neighbors now happens at global scale. Social media platforms amplify upward comparison by presenting curated highlight reels. Research shows that repeated exposure to aspirational lifestyles increases perceived social pressure and decreases financial satisfaction, even when individuals are objectively stable. Unlike traditional advertising, social comparison is peer-driven. It feels authentic, it feels real, and therefore it feels attainable. The problem is that what appears attainable is often leveraged. Many of the neighbors Daniel and Sarah admired were financing their upgrades through home equity loans. Some carried significant credit card balances. Others were quietly stressed about their own rising payments. Comparison does not reveal balance sheets. The debt trap tightens. The turning point rarely arrives dramatically. It creeps. An unexpected boiler replacement, a temporary reduction in overtime hours, a rise in interest rates.
Suddenly, flexibility disappears. When interest rates increased, Daniel and Sarah's variable mortgage payments rose sharply. The car finance remained fixed. Credit card balances, once manageable, began accruing higher interest. Minimum payments consumed cash flow. The lifestyle that once symbolized progress became a financial constraint. Stress entered the household, not through poverty, but through overextension. Why social comparison is so powerful? From an evolutionary standpoint, comparison helped humans survive. Assessing status within a group determined access to resources and social belonging. Today, the group is far larger, but the instinct remains. Several behavioral finance concepts reinforce this pattern. Relative income hypothesis. People care more about how they earn relative to peers than their absolute income. Anchoring bias. The first visible lifestyle sets a spending reference point. Normalization of debt. When borrowing appears common, it feels acceptable. In many surveys, households underestimate how leveraged their peers truly are. The visible car, holiday, or renovation becomes a distorted indicator of financial health. Comparison creates a false financial map. Breaking the cycle. The solution is not isolation from society. It is awareness. Financial planners increasingly emphasize values-based budgeting, aligning spending with personal goals rather than social benchmarks. When individuals define success privately, comparison loses some power. For Daniel and Sarah, recovery began with a detailed financial review. They consolidated high-interest debt, reduced discretionary spending, and paused major lifestyle upgrades. Most importantly, they reframed success, prioritizing savings security over visible consumption. It took 3 years to rebuild their emergency fund and reduce consumer debt to comfortable levels. Nothing about their home changed externally, but internally, financial anxiety eased. The broader economic impact. On a macro level, comparison-driven debt fuels consumption and supports short-term economic growth, but it also increases systemic vulnerability. When households carry high debt relative to income, economic shocks, job losses, rate hikes, recessions have amplified effects. The keeping up with the Joneses phenomenon is not merely a cultural cliché. It is a measurable financial behavior with national implications. A quiet financial revolution. True financial confidence is rarely visible. It does not announce itself with luxury badges or dramatic renovations. It is reflected in low debt ratios, healthy emergency funds, diversified investments, and the ability to withstand economic shifts without panic. In a world engineered for comparison, resisting the pressure to match appearances may be one of the most financially powerful decisions a household can make. Keeping up with the Joneses is expensive. Keeping up with your own long-term goals is transformative. And the difference between the two often determines whether debt becomes a tool or a trap.